Now that we know where the battle is taking place, the next thing to figure out is what exactly can you do on your turn? What actions can you take and how can you take them? So it's time to roll for initiative. When the battle starts and the narrator calls for initiative checks, you're going to roll your 3d6 and add the initiative modifier to it. If there's a tie, the one with a fantastic success goes first. Just a reminder, a fantastic success is when you roll a 1 on the Marvel die. If neither have that, or both do, the one with the higher modifier goes first. If it's still a tie, the player goes first, as in not a narrator run character. If it's among players, you'll just decide it yourself or roll for it. Though the chances of all that is slim, they still need to make sure people know what to do when it happens. After initiative is rolled, someone might have rolled a fantastic success. In that case, they get a bonus round, which means they get a turn before the actual combat begins. If multiple characters get a fantastic success, they go in initiative order before normal turn order for everyone starts. Then there's surprise. It's up to the narrator if a character is surprised. So let's say Green Goblin is robbing a bank, and Spider-Man swings by. He decides to wall crawl and sneak up to the Green Goblin and get the jump on him. The narrator would probably do a vigilance versus agility check for Green Goblin to see if he notices Spidey. If not, then you surprise him and get a bonus round. If you surprise a character mid-combat, the one who surprised them gets an edge on attacks for 1 round. There's a lot of movement in this game, so it'd be easy to lose track of an enemy, especially considering characters with invisibility or illusions. Speaking of losing track of enemies, a lot of powers require line of sight, which is usually 200 spaces. If you're unsure if something is in your line of sight, you'll make a vigilance check against a TN, target number, that the narrator comes up with depending on the circumstances. Usually, though, you'll be able to tell. Obviously, if the enemy is behind a wall, you can't see them, but if they're on the other side of a window or something, I'd say yes. All depends on how the narrator wants to do it, really. There's also earshot, which is used for some powers also. That's only 100 spaces. And same with line of sight. If it's unclear, make a vigilance check. Now, the range of powers depends really on the power, and you can try to hit something that's up to double the range, but it'll have trouble, and beyond that is impossible. I think we're ready to talk about what you can actually do on your turn. First, a thing to keep in mind is that a turn lasts about 5 seconds in game time. On your turn, you get 1 standard action and 1 movement action. There's no need to use an action to do simple things like putting on a mask, reloading a weapon, or reading a sign or something. Basically, any simple task that's near you doesn't cost an action. This is a list of standard actions that you can do on your turn. Attack would be for either close combat or ranged combat with a weapon, which we'll go into more detail about in the next video. Using the dodge action makes it so any attacks against the character have trouble till the next turn. The escape action is for when a character is grabbed or pinned by another character. It allows you to try to break free. You would do a melee check against the grabber's melee defense. It can also be used to free someone else. The last thing it can be used for is when a character is pinned or paralyzed by something physical like webs. You'd still do a melee check, but it'd be against a TN set by the narrator. For example, if Spider-Man webs up the Green Goblin, he'd make a melee check against a TN of 20 to try to break out of it. I talked about setting TNs in this previous video. The grab action is pretty self-explanatory, though still kind of complicated. You use it to grab another character. You just make a melee check against their melee defense, and if you get a fantastic success, they're also pinned. Though neither of you can move unless you can carry the other character, which I'll explain about carrying in the next video. The pinned character has trouble on melee and agility checks. The grabber can let go at any time, but the one being grabbed has to use an escape action. Anyone else who tries to attack them while pinned has trouble because they're entangled and you risk hitting your ally. So if the attack fails, you check it against the agility defense of the other character to see if it hits them instead. But, see, I said it's complicated for what seemed like it'd be so simple. If the attacker doesn't care about who they hit, they get an edge. If the result is high enough to hit one, but not the other, that's who it hits. If, I promise, I'm almost done, the result is high enough to hit either, it's random. Help is for when you want to give an ally a hand. You would describe what you want to do, and the target gets an edge on their next action as long as it's before the helping character's next turn. The move action is used to spend a standard action to get another movement action, basically giving you double movement speed. And finally, use a power, which lets you use a power. That's all I'll say about that till the video about powers gives you something to look forward to. Movement can be a big part of the game since there are a lot of different types and you get a good amount of speed. During your turn, you can use your movement before, during, or after a standard action. So let's say Green Goblin is 10 spaces away from Spider-Man. As Spider-Man, you can swing line 10 spaces, punch Green Goblin, then use the remaining 8 to swing away. There are some powers that require a movement action, but we'll get into that in the powers video. The basic run speed is 5 spaces plus 1 for every 5 points of agility. Spider-Man has an agility score of 7, so his run speed is 6. Climb, jump, and swim speed is half, unless you have a power that says otherwise. You can combine modes of movement, but you have to use the lowest speed as the max movement. If Spider-Man wanted to run, then swing, you'd only be able to go 6 spaces because his run speed is lower. Speaking of swinging, the swing line speed is also the reach of the line, so you have to be within reach of something at the end of your turn or you fall. When a character is gliding at the end of their turn, they lose altitude about half of their glide speed. There's also teleporting, but that's explained more with the power, so we'll move on. Actually, real quick, when moving through difficult terrain, your speed is cut in half. What's difficult terrain? Good question. It's really up to the narrator, but some examples would be stuff like sand, mud, knee-deep water, anything that makes walking or running more difficult than normal. Now, on to reactions, which is something D&D players will be familiar with. Each character gets one reaction every turn they can use whenever something happens that would trigger it. There are a lot of powers that are reactions, which we'll get into in the powers video. This is a list of basic reactions that everyone has access to. They're basically like powers. There's a lot you can do on your turn, and mastering them will take time. It'll get easier the more you do it, and you won't have to think about it anymore. Want to learn how to start building a character? Click here.